Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day and welcome back to my channel. On Friday, we're almost there now, former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou, his second date with destiny. He will take on Anthony Joshua, the former unified heavyweight boxing champion, in another boxing match in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. You may remember on October 28th, Ngannou made his pro boxing debut. Incredibly, his pro boxing debut at 37 years old against the WBC lineal heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. And he dropped Fury in the third round. Ngannou lost that fight by a split decision. A lot of people thought he won, and they thought he won based on the fact that he did a lot better than they expected, and Fury did a lot worse than they expected. This time around, the expectations for Ngannou are certainly increased. Anthony Joshua at DraftKings right now is a minus 450 favorite, which is a pretty hefty favorite in the boxing world, but it's a lot less than it was when Fury was getting ready to fight Ngannou. Nobody knew what to expect from Ngannou. MMA fighters traditionally had not done very well when they moved over into boxing and had fought against high-level boxers, and so nobody gave Ngannou much of a chance. But after seeing what he did in October, now people are giving him a chance, and they realize that Anthony Joshua has been knocked down before. He's been knocked out before. He's been hurt before. And the one thing we know Francis Ngannou can do is this man can really punch. So as I look at this fight, I think what would happen if Francis Ngannou were to pull this off? What would happen to boxing? What would happen to MMA? And I think there's a few things that really kind of emerge from this. If Francis Ngannou happens to win this fight on Friday, I think the one thing that is clear above all else is that he's never fighting MMA again. I think once he gets that win over Anthony Joshua, there's either going to be a rematch with Joshua or a rematch with Fury, or there will be a fight maybe with Alexander Usyk, if Usyk in fact can beat Tyson Fury when they fight in May. So that would mark the end of the line for Francis Ngannou in MMA if he were to win this fight. The money would be too huge. I mean, he would be talking, if he knocks out or just defeats Anthony Joshua, I think he's going to be looking at $75 to $100 million for his next fight, whether that would be a rematch with AJ or, as I mentioned before, against Fury or Usyk. It would just be astronomical money. And let's face it, Renan Ferreira in the PFL isn't really much of a threat to him. I don't think Ferreira really has much to offer Ngannou. There's not going to be a lot of interest in that fight. If he came back to MMA to fight, say, John Jones, okay, then we have an argument, and I think there would be a lot of interest in that fight. But fighting Ferreira in the PFL, I just don't see it happening. So if Francis loses the fight, I expect him to go back to MMA. Maybe not immediately back, but to go back to MMA at some point and fight Renan Ferreira. But if he wins this fight, I think that's the number one thing you're going to take out of this, is that his MMA career is over. And I think what it'll also do is it's going to open the door now for fighters coming up to train in both sports right away and then kind of move where the best fights are for them. Right now you either come up as a boxer or you come up as an MMA fighter. In the early days of MMA, say, the late 90s and the early 2000s going into, the mid part of the first decade of this century, fighters would come in one-dimensional. Maybe they were a kickboxer, or maybe they were a wrestler or a black belt in jiu-jitsu, or a judo player or something else, and then they would learn how to defend takedowns, and they would learn all the other aspects of MMA. But what's happening in the sport now, and why it's getting so much better, is kids are starting to train at an early age. The success the sport has had has spawned kids wanting to get in. There have been gyms open, and kids are training as MMA fighters from the beginning. So now I think what that does is, if Ngannou wins this fight, you're going to have a lot of these kids say, okay, I'm going to look and I'm going to take fights in both sports, and I'm going to see where I'm better and maybe focus on that, but bounce back and forth more often. Right now, there's not enough fighters out there who have the ability, I think, as an MMA fighter, to go in and take on the very top boxers in the world. And that's for a simple reason. They are generalists. They are specializing in all different aspects of combat sports. They're learning to wrestle, they're learning jiu-jitsu, they're learning kickboxing, they're learning traditional boxing, they're learning all these other things, and they're learning how to put it together in mixed martial arts. Now you go to boxers, and all boxers do is train in boxing all the time. They get in condition to box, and it has a different rhythm and a different pace than it does in MMA, and they get in condition and they train themselves and they teach themselves how to throw their hands and how to defend. And so they are at a great advantage when they go up against MMA fighters who, yes, have good hands. And as my friend Dean Thomas, the former UFC fighter and now broadcaster, brought up, MMA hands are getting a lot better. I agree with that, but they're still not boxing hands. And boxing fighters take different stances. They have to defend different ways than MMA fighters do. And so I think that right now it's not fair, but I think what would end up happening, and you would see in a couple of years, if Francis wins this fight, you're going to see some of these young guys training in both sports. And Sean O'Malley's talking about the UFC Bantamweight champion who defends his title on Saturday at UFC 299 in Miami. Sean O'Malley's talking about taking a big boxing match against one of the really good lightweights or super lightweight boxers in the world. And O'Malley is good. He's got great striking. And there's going to be other guys like him who are going to work on both. They're going to work on pure boxing, and they're going to take boxing matches. They're going to work on MMA, and they're going to take MMA fights, and then they'll go where the money is. And I think that's a really smart thing. And that could help guys really supplement their incomes and maximize what they make out of the sport, because it's a tough sport being in combat sports. You know, your body, you pay a huge toll. I talked to Dustin Poirier last week. He is fighting in the co-main event of UFC 299, and he talked about the tremendous sacrifices that his MMA career has taken on his body, and the toll it has taken on his body. And you can't do it for all that long, and you feel it the rest of your life, right? So let's maximize their money. But if Ngannou wins, where will that leave guys like, first of all, Anthony Joshua, and then also Tyson Fury? Well, I think if Ngannou wins, it's probably going to be by a knockout, right? I don't think Francis Ngannou is going to go out there and stick and move and outbox Anthony Joshua over 12 rounds. Even though Anthony Joshua is big and he's powerful, he is a good boxer, right? He has boxing ability for a big man, and that is what's made him so good, is because he's had not only that physical strength and power to hurt people, but he can set those shots up with his footwork and his quickness, and he gets himself into positions to set those big power shots up. So I think if Francis is going to win the fight, I don't think that he is going to go out there and over the course of the fight outbox Anthony Joshua. But what I think he can do is maybe land that big shot that hurts Anthony and then jump on him and try to finish. And so if that happens, I think that is really going to make a big difference for the rest of Anthony Joshua's career, because he has had 3 losses in his career and 27 wins. But you don't hear a lot of people talking about a lot of his wins. You hear them talking about his losses. He lost twice to Alexander Usyk, and he got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. Both of those gentlemen are heavyweight champions. Right now, Usyk is the reigning unified champion. He has 3 of the 4 major belts. Andy Ruiz, big puncher. You know, Andy, up until he fought Anthony Joshua on June 1st, 2019, had always been kind of an enigma. People looked at him and, you know, he's a big, heavy-set kid, but he always had fast hands. He always had good feet, and he could hit hard. And he kind of never really put it together, you know. And that one particular night, he put it together. And it was kind of like Buster Douglas in 1990 against Mike Tyson. You know, he finally put all the talent together. He got the mix right, and he went out there and he knocked out Mike Tyson. And that's what Andy Ruiz did on June 1st, 2019 in New York to AJ. I don't think AJ deserves to be dogged for that, because in heavyweight boxing, you know, you're one punch away from looking up at the lights and watching everybody leave the arena. That's just the way heavyweight boxing is. When you have 250-plus pound men winging punches as hard as these guys wing punches, if you get hit on the chin, you're going to be in trouble. And Alexander Usyk, even though he's smaller, a lot of people say he is a small heavyweight, and I guess by today's standards, he is small. Usyk is 6'3", 220 pounds, but he's bigger than Jack Dempsey. He's bigger than Rocky Marciano. He's bigger than Joe Louis, and he's about the same size as Muhammad Ali. So he is not a tiny heavyweight, but he's a great boxer. He was the undisputed cruiserweight champion. He is hoping, if he beats Tyson Fury, to become the undisputed heavyweight champion. So Usyk, losing to Usyk is not that big of a deal for Anthony Joshua. People want to make it a big deal, but it's not. But I think if he loses to Francis, it's going to totally make him do a whole recalibration of what he's doing, and really look seriously at his career. Because while Francis clearly has skills, and while Francis has a tremendous amount of heart, he has not boxed. He's only had a few months of training, right? It's only been in the last year or so that he's really gotten in there and worked on boxing for a long time. And he's 37 years old. Francis is 37. This is not like he's 22 and on the ascent. And he's had 10 rounds, 30 minutes in the ring. And he could have won that fight against Tyson Fury. I gave it to Fury. I thought Fury edged it out by the slimmest of margins. When the fight ended, I said, I think I tweeted this at the time, you can't argue who won the fight. I thought Fury pulled it out. But it was one of those, fights where it was going to be 1 point either way. And both guys deserve what they got, right? Francis, the mistake he made in that Fury fight is he was not busy enough in round 7, 8, 9, and 10, especially in 9 and 10. And I think if he gets to the stretch run this time against AJ, he is going to fight a completely different way. But I think if AJ loses to Francis, he really, he's going to ask for a rematch. There's no doubt about that. But he's going to have to take stock of every single thing he's done, because this is a guy that went out and won an Olympic gold medal. He became the unified heavyweight champion. He showed great heart, great courage in pulling himself up off the deck when he fought Vladimir Klitschko in 2017 and came back and stopped the great Vladimir Klitschko in the 11th round of that fight. If he loses to a guy with one fight who hasn't really trained boxing for a long time, that is going to be devastating for him, and I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome that. That'll be an interesting thing to watch. And the other thing that I think is going to be a factor here is a lot of the young kids. What do they decide to do? Who are going into combat sports, who are training in combat sports now? Do they look at boxing and say, this is where I want to be because this is where the big money is if I get to the top? We know Floyd Mayweather made $300 million to fight Manny Pacquiao. He made, 200-something million to fight Conor McGregor in 2017. He made an astronomical amount of money throughout his whole career. And you see Floyd jet-setting around the world now and just living a dream life because of how good he was in boxing. But you have to get to the top in boxing to make that kind of money. In boxing, there's big money for about 1% or less of the fighters, and then there's not much money for 99% of the fighters. And the 1% of the fighters who make all that money are the guys we see on TV, right? But the fighters who are making $1,200 and $1,500 for these 4 and 6 round fights, we never hear about, we never talk about. And so if Anthony Joshua loses, do a lot of these kids now coming up say, maybe I should train MMA? I know I said earlier that they would try both, but I wonder if AJ really loses, are you going to have some of them to say, you know what, MMA is where it's at and the money is more evenly spread out there. And if I can go back into boxing when the opportunity presents itself, I should do that. I think it's going to be a very fascinating fight. I will give you my prediction on Joshua Fury later in the week. And if you buy the fight on payperview.com, remember, Jim Lampley and myself will be doing a live chat answering your questions during that. So look forward to that, and I hope I can answer your questions during the actual fight broadcast. So looking forward to seeing the fight. That's what I think. There's a couple of ways that this could go if Francis Ngannou wins. It might change some things. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch this fight, to be part of this fight. I can't wait to see what happens. I hope you enjoy the fight. And if you can do me a really big favor, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That will help me so much. And I'm doing everything I can to make it better. And you're going to see that over the next coming weeks. A lot of improvements and a lot of changes. And if you let me know in the comments what you would like to see me do or who you would like to see me interview, I will also consider that. So anyways, have a great day. Enjoy the fights, and we will talk to you soon, my friends.